My wife has been standing still for hours. My wife has suddenly stopped still, and before she stopped still, we were arguing about finances and about me. She just wasn't happy about the situation with our marriage and everything in general. I became angry, and in the middle of her anger, she stopped still. She still had that angry face and her body language was still showing signs of anger, but she was still as a statue. Then as I tried to get her to stop messing around, I just went upstairs and tried to cool off and then went out. Then my eldest teenager called me to say that wife is still standing still. I came home to find my wife still standing still, and my eldest was also confused. I tried to calm my daughter down, and it must have been 5 hours at this point that my wife has been standing still. It didn't make sense at all, and I tried to knowingly tell my wife to snap it out. Nothing came back, and I wanted her to shout at me and tell me that I am useless, something isn't right. My eldest daughter started to cry and shout at her mother to stop whatever she is doing. Then I saw a fly land on my wife's shoulder and it never flew off. Another 5 hours went past and that fly was still on my wife's shoulders. My wife was still stand still. Then my daughter came down all worried and she was crying again, and when she touched my wife, she was suddenly standing still. My daughter wanted to hug my wife, but when my daughter's hand touched my wife's shoulders, my daughter is now still. Her face is in the crying motion and I am bewildered now. I try to shout at my daughter to snap out of it, but she is now like my wife. Now it's my wife, my daughter and that fly who are standing still. They even their facial motion and bodily movement are standing still. Then when my wife's parents came over, when they touched my wife, they too became standing still. Then when my wife's best friend came over, she touched my daughter's shoulder and she too became standing still. This was becoming absurd and I was out of my wind with hardly any idea on what to do. I called over my friend and he had an idea on what to do. He told me to get out for a couple of minutes, then I heard chainsaw and my friend chainsawed my daughter's hand, and then my daughter was moving it as well as my wife's best friend. My daughter was screaming in pain, but her chopped off hand was still attached to my wife.